Welcome everyone to the Master of Journalism information session. I am Tanisha McMeekin, the Graduate Program Administrator, and I'm going to hand it over to Joyce Smith, our Graduate Program Director, who's going to walk you through a high-level overview of the program. I'm going to be on deck to answer administrative questions and anything about the application, and of course be answering questions in the chat. But yes, I'm going to hand it over to Joyce to take it over.
Okay, well, good evening, everyone. It may not be evening where you are, depending on the time zone you find yourself in, but welcome to our chat tonight about the master's program. I'm an associate professor at the School of Journalism. I've been here at Ryerson since 2001, and it's my return to the role of directing the grad program. So I've done it before, and I'm happy to be back doing it again. So first off, I recognize some of the names that I see on the screen here. Some of you have been sending me emails with questions. So I haven't been answering them all because I've been hoping you'd show up tonight and I could answer them for you in person. But let me know when we get to the Q&A session. So I think what I'm going to do off the top is just give you a little bit of, as Tanisha said, an overview of the program itself. Some of the strengths, the particular strengths of studying journalism at Ryerson at the master's level. And I really want to leave a lot of time for question and answers so everyone can find out what it is that the burning questions that you have will get answered. And the chat is the best place, as Daniel has just put into the chat there. If you want to type in your questions, that's probably the best bet. So first off, it is a 5-semester program. So what this means is the fall, winter, and spring, summer of the first year, followed by the fall and winter of the second year. So it's not quite 2 years long, 5 semesters. And what do you get in those 5 semesters? Lots and lots. So basically you get an opportunity to fall in love with every kind of platform and form of journalistic storytelling. So you get to try short breaking news pieces, long form documentary pieces. You get to hone your skills writing and editing and verifying, but you also get to do things that you may not have had the opportunity to try before. So using audio and video equipment, mastering and honing digital skills, including social media, how to use social media to be a journalist. What we want people to have when they come out of our program are a couple of things. So as one is really the Ryerson trademark, which is that you can go directly into an entry-level position. And the people who are hiring you know what they're getting when they get a Ryerson grad. They're getting someone who's competent, who's thoughtful, who's able to day one pitch stories and contribute to whatever news organization they find themselves in. But the second thing, and this is probably part of what differentiates the master's program from our undergraduate program, is we want to give you the context and the theory and the opportunity to think about the practice of journalism as we find ourselves in it today, but also where it's going in the future. We want you to be able to be a leader in the field of journalism. We want you to carry forward the ideas of journalism in an absolutely valid, ethical way, but recognizing that we don't know what kind of shape or form journalism is going to take. We want you to have the skills also perhaps to do something quite entrepreneurial, not necessarily to work in legacy media, but to maybe strike out on your own and try something completely different. So that's really the hallmark of the program. It's a practical program. You actually will be doing things. You'll be interviewing people and writing real stories right off the top when you arrive. But we also want to give you those longer term skills that are going to help you not just to get a job, but to keep the job and maybe even to create your own kind of job, which all sounds wonderful. I hope you agree, but let me tell you how all that magic happens now. So in your first semester, you come in and you take a group of required courses. one that basically gets you reporting right off the bat. And we use cities as our sort of playground for reporting. So if, as we hope, as we pray, we'll be back on campus next fall, you'll be assigned a neighborhood in Toronto that's yours. It's your beat for the semester, and you'll be reporting from there. This semester, with students who are not on campus, they're reporting from their own hometowns. They're reporting from Vancouver or from Montreal or wherever they find themselves. But the city really is the sort of core area for our explorations of journalism. You take a course looking at urban politics and sociology so that you don't just cover the police beat, you have an understanding of the history of policing and how it works and the kinds of social contracts, for instance. You take a course on research methods. So you figure out all the things you need to know to look up who owns that house and who has the mortgage on that house and why is that all very interesting. You learn how to verify information, how to find information and verify it. And I'm trying to think, those are the 3 core courses that you take, and they all work together in that first semester. The second semester, you have courses which are more like expanding your horizons in terms of media. So you start to work in multimedia, whether that's audio, video, infographics, as well as longer form. So looking at longer feature pieces and documentary pieces. But you get a chance to try everything and to see what kind of fits the kind of things that you want to accomplish in your career. The next semester is usually characterized by an internship, particularly. Of course, this year with COVID, some of the internships got pushed into the fall semester, but generally speaking, you have an opportunity to work at a professional news outlet where you receive great mentorship. And often our students do find that it really is their foot in the door for continuing their career. So that's probably the most important part of the spring summer session. Students then also start to make choices. So the first year is pretty prescriptive, basically. You take required courses. As you get into the second year, you start to make more choices in terms of, for instance, taking courses that we would call beat or specialty reporting. So that could be anything from health and science reporting, international reporting, sports reporting, business reporting, I gotta say religion reporting, because that's my specialty. It gives you a chance to branch out. You also have the opportunity to really hone your skills in a medium. So you choose to either participate in the Ryersonian, which is basically a 24/7 news operation. It's a website. They publish about a couple times a semester, a print version of the newspaper, but there are podcasts, daily radio casts, video updates. You can take a look at it online and you'll see how the students run it. The other masthead opportunity is the Ryerson Review of Journalism, or the RRJ, which is a professionally produced magazine, the only one of its kind in Canada, that critiques the practice of journalism from a particularly Canadian lens. And students have the opportunity to work on that as well. So producing stories, doing all the editing, all the fact checking, having masthead positions. So it's a really, really big project. Besides the courses, the electives, the things that you can choose from, all students in this program complete what is called a major research project, or an MRP. Now, despite how it sounds, the major research project is not a traditional piece of research. It's not a thesis. What it is a substantial piece of journalism that you choose and that you are mentored through the process with a supervisor. So this could take the form of a series of newspaper stories, podcasts, a video, like a more traditional TV documentary. It could be a multimedia site. Whatever it is, it's a piece of journalism of high caliber and high quality that you do as your sort of capstone project. and you do a small reflective essay alongside it. So it's a wonderful opportunity to pursue a topic of your choosing, something that interests you, and you work one-on-one with a faculty member who supervises you. So that's the major piece of work. And there are courses which support you along the way in completing that MRP. So those are the main components of the program itself. And I'm trying to think, I bet there are going to be tons of questions about admission applications, I'm guessing. So rather than me go through all of them, maybe this is a good point to open the floor for some questions. What do you think, Tanisha?
Yes, I agree. I believe a student named, a prospective student, Natalie, had a question. Feel free to unmute yourself, Natalie. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Yes, you got it. Thank you. I was just wondering, I know that it was mentioned that for our capstone project, a student will choose or not choose, I guess, collaborate and get a professor to supervise their project. But I was wondering, there is also an option to put down potential supervisors in the application portal itself. And I was wondering if that's something that is recommended that we do, or if it's just kind of a carryover from OUAC for other more academic or research-based programs. Because obviously I've looked into professors that I think would be very interesting to work with, but I'm not sure if it would be appropriate or necessary to put them down as potential supervisors.
So it's a good question. It's not necessary. I guess what it does do for your application is it shows us that you've looked at our program and that you have a good sense of what it is you're applying for. So you don't have to. And if you choose to, I promise you're not going to be forced to work with that person and stick to your original story idea. But it does give us a sense that you've taken the time to look at the program and you have a sense of the faculty who work here and the kinds of interests that we have.
All right, excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. Who else could we hear from, Tanisha?
I don't see that anyone else raised their hand, but there's a question from Britt. She was asking about reference letters, and the question is, during the application process, do we submit the reference letters or the contact information for our references who will send on their reference letter? I'm curious if my references need to give their letters to me and what contact information they need to provide. So the application itself asks you to input the contact information of your referees. So the letters don't go to you. Once you put the contact information into the application system, pay for your application, after 3 to 5 business days, your application will be created and generated in the system, and then a portal will be created for you to access, to be able to upload your required documentation. And around that time, an email will be sent out, an automated email will be sent out to your selected referees, prompting them to fill out a reference letter for you. Be sure that you are firm and have selected a reliable referee, because you will not be able to change that person. So you want to make sure that the person is reliable, knows you, can write an enthusiastic letter, and is someone who, when I say reliable, will turn around a letter for you in a timely manner. I see that Hannah has a question. I'm going to turn to the chat to see what I can answer.
So go ahead, Hannah.
Sorry, hi. My specific question is, I did a semester abroad in my undergrad, and I was just wondering if I need to submit my transcript from the school in England, as well as my transcript from my home university when I submit my application, because my grades from that portion show up as pass or fail on my transcript. from my home university? And if so, how? Because I couldn't find an option to add another transcript on the OUAC website. I'm not sure if that was just technical issues on my part or if it's even possible.
That's a good question, Hannah. It's one that I might have to throw to Tanisha because I don't know all the ins and outs of the transcript stuff.
I was actually reading the chat a little bit, so let me just recap the question to make sure I heard it correctly. Is it that you have you want to request a transcript for an exchange year?
Yes, an exchange semester. Do I need to include that as well as my my transcript from my home university? And if
yes,
so,
if it's possible. Like I've seen that students have been able to get, depending on the institution, a copy of that transcript. If there's grades available, then that will be calculated by the admissions officer, as well as we'll be looking at that when we, as part of the admissions process, we also, for individuals who apply early, so the first consideration deadline is January 18th. So students who apply by that deadline, we start to look at prestigious awards like the OGS and the RGS, and we'll be looking at the calculations for those that semester. That let's say you were on exchange. So if there's actual grades available, we can use those to calculate. If not, we would just do the semester before that. But it's great to have those grades because it can augment your application and really help see if you're eligible for prestigious academic prestigious awards.
right. How do I include that as well as my, because every time I clicked to add another transcript, it only showed my home university and I wasn't able to like change it and add another one, if that makes sense. It might just be a technical issue. I don't know, but
it might be. I've generated an application myself so I could play around with the system, and I haven't come across that issue. So how about you contact me privately with your email, and I will follow up with you around that, because I'm not sure how to. I'll try and play with the system, but then I'll also contact admissions to see what they suggest.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Hannah. I'm going to jump into a couple things I've seen in the chat from Tara. I don't know if it's Tara or Tara. Is there the opportunity to specialize in broadcast journalism specifically? You can definitely choose, for instance, to do your major project using a broadcast medium. You can take a couple of advanced courses, which are going to help you with that. But you do work in all of the media all the way through, because what we found is that in this era of journalism, it's very hard to find anyone who really talks about themselves as a broadcast journalist, as opposed to a print journalist, as opposed to, newspaper people do broadcast things now too. So it's, you do get a chance to do everything, but yes, when it comes especially to your MRP and your internship, if you tell us that you're particularly interested in broadcast, we'll try and find you a spot at a broadcaster to do your internship. So I hope that answers that a little bit.
There's a question from Melina in the chat. Can you provide some possible examples about the kind of major projects that have been done in the past?
I sure can. So great question. So they're so wide ranging. I'll tell you a few, I guess, about things that students with working with me have done. I've had a student do a great piece on gender segregated spaces, religious and not, multimedia piece. We've had people do stories which, for instance, we had one that was dealing with intricacies within the Law Society of Ontario. I've supervised another piece which was looking at the relationship or the future of Hockey Night in Canada, if it would ever go back to the CBC. We've had pieces on bioengineered pigs. We've had pieces on the front page of the Globe and Mail about controversies around sperm donors. We've had, it's almost anything you can imagine. It's things about the people who clean the Sky Dome, the Rogers Center here. So it just absolutely crosses boundaries of content and form. So the world is really your oyster when you start off on one of these projects, which is pretty great. It doesn't get assigned to you. What else have we got here? Tara's also asking how many people get accepted each year to the program. Tanisha, roughly
About 26.
26?
Mhm.
26.
26
So
students.
you could be one of those 26. It is competitive, but there are 26 spots. So can I answer Emma's question about published clips, maybe?
Yes, I put an answer in the chat, but I think an answer from you would.
Yeah. So we prefer not to get academic papers just because of the nature of the program. We want people to understand that it's a journalism program they're coming to, not a traditional academic master graduate program. So there may be some of you who are like, I don't have clips. I haven't worked at a university paper or something like that, or community paper. We often suggest, what you might want to do is between now and submitting your application, try to do some interviewing. Try to, interview. Of course, COVID makes all this more interesting, but see if you can't interview a parent who's dealing with shutdowns at their kids' elementary school, or interview somebody who's dealing with charitable drives leading up to the holidays. Show us that you understand what journalism is and that you've had a go at talking to people other than yourself, basically. I hope that helps with that one. Letter of intent. Should I speak to that one?
Yes, go ahead.
Letter of intent.
Go ahead, please.
So again, the letter of intent is to really, when we look at these applications, we really want to make sure that those 26 people who come into the program know what journalism is and know that they want to be doing it. So it's very important that you give us a sense of what your motivations are for coming to the program. As graduate students, often undergraduate students, when they come, there's a certain amount of parental either support or pressure to study certain things. But as graduate students, this is usually a very conscious decision that you're making. So we want to understand, what is it that's motivating you to basically come and pay tuition and work hard for these 5 semesters. So we're looking for people who write well. We're looking for people who are thoughtful. We're looking for people who are curious about the world around them. So that's it's not so much an issue with graduate students, applicants, as it is for the undergrads, but people who understand that journalism is about telling other people's stories and not just their own story. So I hope that helps a little bit.
We have a question about what are examples of places where students have had the opportunity to intern?
Great question. So we have a lot of students who go to the CBC, and the CBC has, as you can imagine, an array of different kinds of opportunities, digital, primarily radio and TV, as well as the breaking news kind of stuff. We've had students who are very keen on a certain kind of journalism who will find spots with TSN, for instance, or other sports outlets. People who are really keen on politics, who find their way at TVO's The Agenda, for instance. But we also have students who choose to do internships out of the GTA, out of the Toronto region, and that's fine too. So what we like to do is if you have a place that you're keen on, and we think it's a good opportunity for mentorship, we'll do our best to support you to get in there. But I think one of the important things about our program is that we help you find places. So it's not a case of, there are people, as I was when I was your age, I didn't have connections in the industry. I didn't know where to go. So we can really help you as an entree into a spot that would be a good fit for you and for the news outlet where you are. So I hope that helps a bit.
So we talked about places to intern. I'm just going to skip over to this question because I'm in the middle of writing something. Hello, I'm curious about how bilingualism is included in the program. What kind of advantages do languages play in the program, and how can the familiarity of another language, French, for example, help with the world of journalism?
Right. So, I mean, I hope at this point you don't need to be told that having other languages in your backpack of skills is a fantastic thing to have. Now, bilingualism, it's not, Ryerson is an English university, and we don't have courses per se in journalism offered in anything other than English. However, the opportunities for you to use your other language skills in locating and contacting people from other linguistic communities is massive. We have had students whose first language is French in our program, and I can think of one right now who works for the CBC French language news here in Ontario. I've had students who speak Portuguese, who speak Spanish, who speak Tagalog, who speak, you name it. And it's been fantastic for them in terms of opening up job possibilities. But I just want to be clear that in our program itself, it's I would be dishonest to say that it's actually included in the program. But I like practicing Spanish when I get the opportunity with somebody. All right.
There's a question about, could you talk a little bit more about scholarship opportunities? I can answer that.
Sounds good.
So when folks apply and students are automatically considered for admission scholarships. So students who get an offer of admission will get some funding attached to that, from $2,000 to $7,000 in Ryerson Graduate Fellowship funding. There's also the Ontario Graduate Fellowship, which is a $12,000 scholarship that's awarded to the next best person who has not received an Ontario Graduate Scholarship or a Ryerson Graduate Scholarship. Both the Ryerson Graduate Scholarship, the RGS, and the Ontario Graduate Scholarship, the OGS, are worth $15,000. So that money is available to students. There's no guarantee that students will get the prestigious awards. The prestigious awards are based on merit. All of the awards are based on merit, but the RGF, it's a combination of grades and also like ranking in the application process. But with the OGS and the RGS, you need at least an A- or higher in each of the last 2 years. And as an administrator of the program, I do that calculation of the last 2 years of your undergrad. So those are some of the awards that you can apply to, you'll be considered for. Then there's program specific, there's a financial scholarship that is, once we get the cohort of students who are coming into the program, there's approximately $2,500 that's available to a student who's focused on financial journalism. Throughout the course of the academic year, in the first year, there might be other scholarships that come down the pipe that the School of Journalism will make known to me and ask me to have our students be considered for it. When those crop up, then those opportunities are available as well. If there's any remaining scholarship funding, the RGF money or the RGF money, sometimes we can repurpose that as MRP support, depending. And in the second year, there's also an opportunity for some other related project funding that's related to our program, and it's donor sponsored.
Yeah,
That's the question.
Yeah, so there is funding. Of course, what we'd love to do is offer everybody full tuition as an entry award, but unfortunately that's not possible. But as Tanisha alluded to, we're lucky to have a number of donors. So there are also awards tied to courses. So for instance, graduate students who are part of teams making documentaries, or yeah, there are other opportunities like that once you're in the program. I'm looking here quick things. Internet links in my portfolio. Yes, absolutely. That's good for us to see. Is there a word maximum for the letter of intent? Oh, please try. That's one of your first tests as a would-be journalism student. We like to have word counts and try and keep to them. I know it's hard sometimes, but do your best. Do international students tend to find work in Canada after graduating? That's a great question. To be honest, the percentage of students in our program who are international students is relatively small. We do have some. I have a feeling that some of them probably may also have dual citizenship, so it might be hard for me to answer that question properly. But I can say overall for the MJ students, the employment opportunities are very good, even though we're in a really tough spot in journalism at the moment. So, you know, a lot of our grads do end up finding work pretty quickly out of the program. Part of it is that internship opportunity that I talked about. But the other thing is employers really like students coming out of the MJ program because you are more mature, you have a better sense of what it is that you want to do. And you have another area of expertise to draw upon, right? You have an undergrad degree in something, which makes you particularly interesting to a lot of employers. So I can't guarantee you a job as an international student, but that part's important.
I believe Jordan had their hand up.
Hi there. Yeah, I just wanted to loop back to the portfolio question for a moment. Joyce, you mentioned the suggestion of conducting an interview between now and the application deadline. And I guess my question is about the strategy of the portfolio. Is it, I come from a non-journalism background, and so I don't have any previously published journalistic work. So I guess my question is the purpose of the portfolio to demonstrate a skill in writing, or is it to demonstrate like breadth of publishing and an achievement in publishing? Because I didn't consider conducting interviews or trying to generate journalistic writing before my application, because I thought it was more about like serving as a CV.
Yeah, so I guess the answer to that is D, all of the above. It serves all of those purposes. And I think I'm noticing Tanisha has answered in the chat that we have people who are admitted without materials in their portfolio. It's just that if you have an opportunity, it gives us a sense of the fact that you understand what journalism is, I guess. So in terms of looking at writing, you know, you could submit the most wonderful academic essay, beautifully written and argued, but that's not actually going to be very helpful because we're looking for, as I say, evidence of an understanding of what journalism is and basically what you're getting yourself into if you are admitted to the program. So I don't know if that helps answer your question.
Yeah, I guess one specific question would be, so say you include a number of interviews you've conducted. Could you also include something like a pitch to a journalism publication as well?
You could. I mean, it would show that you're the kind of things that you're curious about, and that you could put together such a letter. I guess I wouldn't. I'm trying to think. I don't think I've ever seen one of those in an admissions packet, which doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. But I'm not sure. I guess it would show that you have an understanding of the process and show us the kind of story that you might want to tell. So it could work.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
That's a Weasley answer. I'm sorry. I can't tell you exactly.
We have another question from Melina. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi. I just had another question about the portfolio aspect of the application. I have a piece of published work as a feature piece, but it was written more from the standpoint of a personal essay, but it was included in the feature column of my university's newspaper. Would that count as as a strong piece of journalistic work for the portfolio?
You could definitely include it. I don't think I'd want to see 5 pieces of that kind, but absolutely as one of them, sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There was a question in the chat that I might need clarification for. The question is, in terms of the last 2 years of undergrad, do you guys allow second year undergrad courses to be considered? So can you clarify that for me, for the person who asked that question, if you don't mind?
I'm guessing here, is it mean that you got to like fourth year and you took your second year or something that was labeled as a second year course in your final year? I think that goes towards your GPA.
Yeah, like
that
if
year.
the last 2 years are, you know, what we look at, we'd only look at other years if, let's say, there was an exchange year and we needed to go to, and there was like pass fail or the grades weren't available, we would go into the semesters before the last 2 years if we needed to, but that's the only reason.
Yeah, so generally speaking, it's quite difficult, especially outside of Ryerson, even within Ryerson, to figure out what counts as a second year course. So as long as the course is there and a grade is entered in the last 2 years, then it would, as far as I can tell, it would be adjudicated in the same way as the other courses. So I hope that answers that. How are we doing here? Lots of questions about the percentages and the scales for transcripts, which is...
I answered that one in the chat. Yeah. So if you're, like what we honor the grade scale and the way that your school uses. So if you use percentages, your self-declared grades can be in percentages. If they use letter grades, use letter grades. The admissions officers will convert to our equivalents. We also see your school's grade scale, but we also look at Ryerson equivalent. So just declare your grades as you understand them using your school scale.
There's a question here about the program for an experienced journalist, which is a great question. One of the nice things about this program, there are many nice things, but one of them is that we get applicants who have almost zero journalism experience, as well as people who have already been working as journalists. Maybe not for more than 10 years, but often 4 or 5 years. So what are the benefits? There are many, especially if you are coming from another country. One is not everybody who's been working as a journalist has had the opportunity to work in all the forms of media that we offer instruction in. So that's one thing. We do sometimes have people who are like, I've worked in a small town newspaper, but now I get a chance to do podcasting and I get to try other things. So that's one thing. The other thing obviously is the chance for that all important and omnipresent Canadian experience checkbox that people look at. So, the opportunity to take courses with Canadian instructors, Canadian journalists who are currently working, teach for us part-time, and to do an internship somewhere. I would say those are all benefits for someone who's got experience but from outside Canada. Let's see.
Another question here. Have there been any changes in the curriculum, additions or subtractions due to COVID-19?
Oh my goodness. Is there a part of the world where there hasn't been any changes due to COVID-19? It's a great question. So as you may well have experienced, we had to pivot quickly at the end of the winter semester last year and put things online. We have all of our courses online this fall and winter semesters. And yes, it has been challenging. I think one of the toughest things has been the internships because a lot of the newsrooms completely shut down. However, all of the MJs are, if they have not, there might be 2 or 3 left who are completing internships at the moment, virtually, but nonetheless working for organizations. There have been changes in the way that we teach things like television broadcasting, but the great thing is we're learning how to do it just as the professionals are as well. Like how do you do these things from home? How do you keep yourself and your interview subject safe and still get a good interview? So all of those things are happening. The students currently, their MRPs that they're working on, some of them have had to be changed. It's very hard to get on a plane and travel out to, Prince George or something in the middle of this craziness. But we're doing it. And it's important because that's the nature of journalism. It's not creating the perfect thing. It's creating the best you can in the circumstances that you find yourself. All right. What else? What have we been doing to support students during COVID? Well, lots of trying to figure out how to get equipment to people. We've been reconfiguring our teaching strategies. So we often have courses that are timetabled to be like 6 hours. You're basically in a newsroom for 6 hours. Obviously, we don't want to do that. So being strategic with the kind of synchronous teaching that we're doing, and using asynchronous things, online tutorials, whatever we can do.
No, I need you to
from that
push.
end.
I'm so sorry.
Do
you wanna-
put the microphone on? There we go. Could you create a piece of journalistic work and submit it even if it's unpublished? Yes. Just make it clear to us that it hasn't run somewhere else. Acceptance rate, that's a really hard one to answer from year to year. I wouldn't even try to do that, answer that question. It's competitive, but not impossible, I guess, is my weaselly thing.
We have Natalie has a question. Go ahead, Natalie.
Hi, yeah, sorry. I know there's been a lot about the portfolio as of now, but I just had one question. I'm someone who's done a decent amount. I don't want to say the majority, but probably about half of my work has been in the area of video journalism and like podcasting and radio. Sorry, I just saw the message. I thought it was talking to me. So I was just wondering, how strict is the limitation of one non-written piece, if that makes sense? Or could it be subverted in some way by including, the written materials that potentially accompanied a video or podcast piece?
I haven't looked at the sort of student-facing part of the application process myself for this year to see. I guess one thing I would suggest is in the letter of intent, are your materials accessible online, like
Yes.
a YouTube channel or something? Yeah. So I guess that's something that I might suggest, is that in the body of your letter of intent, you could also point to those and give us links.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Just wondering.
Yep.
Hey, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. I'm not sure if you got to this question, Joyce. Just to clarify, could we create a piece of journalistic work and submit it even if it's unpublished?
Yeah, so absolutely. Just at the top of it, say, I haven't had the opportunity to have a publication, but here's an example of a story that I wrote interviewing these 3 local people. And that's fine. Just don't try and pass it off as a cover story in the New York Times, because we'll figure that one out. But yeah, just make it clear. That's fine.
I think that there was another raised hand. I'm not sure. Malena, did you have your hand raised at one point? You can just say no. I thought I saw there was 2 hands raised.
Yeah, I just raised it again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
Yes. Sorry, I have another question about the portfolio. So in terms of putting the portfolio together, would you guys be looking for us to make some kind of like Word document with copy and pasted like articles from the different websites that we've written for, if that's the case? Like what should our portfolio look like and how should it be organized?
Tanisha, do you have you've looked at these things more recently than I have?
Yes. Usually students you have to submit a PDF. So if you're sending in links to digital work, if there's pieces of, like, if it's a YouTube link, some people kind of do a screenshot of like their video with a description. It doesn't have to look fancy. It just needs to link us to your quality work. If there's a link, and let's say it's a website of some sort, you'd want to make sure there's a short little blurb that says, you know, access this piece, look at the excerpt of this that I wrote part of this. I want you to focus in on this chunk. You can be very specific. It doesn't have to be pretty, but you'd want to just, it could be just a PDF with a series of links with titles and paragraphs explaining what to look at.
Okay, so just to clarify, so all of my work has been written work that's both been printed in a physical newspaper, but a lot of it is online. And for the purposes of the application, I was just going to link all the articles that have been printed to their online links. So is it necessary for me to add a link and a blurb in the PDF as well as like a copy and pasted version of online? Or okay.
No, like if you have multiple, like, and Joyce, you can chime in with any sort of expertise you have. If you have, depending on how many pieces you have, you might just want to highlight a few quality ones and say, you know, I have a plethora of work. However, you know, these 3 pieces are my, you know, best exemplify my, you know, journalistic abilities or whatever, what have you, or like are related to the theme of my proposed MRP or something, you know, like you can just highlight a few. It doesn't have to be, we don't have to, if you have 10 published pieces, you know, like you don't have to necessarily have them all for us to read. It would just be highlighting a few, if that's something you feel comfortable with. I don't know.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is, you probably know as well as I do that sometimes links go dead on news sites. So it's always a good idea if it's out there to tell us like what the headline was, what the headline or title was, and the date it was published and where, just in case.
So it's not exactly necessary for us to, basically, if I go onto the website, find the article, copy and paste the entire thing with the picture that was used into the PDF. It's just easier to put the title of the article, maybe a little excerpt, and provide, I think it was 6 examples.
Yeah, I mean, I would go with Tanisha's advice that if there are 1 or 2 that you're particularly proud of, it's probably not a bad idea to do the copy paste thing, just because it makes it easier for us to read than to all sit and click on links. But if you want to give us a sense of some of the other things you've written, that's probably a good idea.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. There was a question here. I just want to pick up Tanisha, and then we can. What kind of students best succeed in the program, which is a really interesting question. I would say that one of the beauties of this program is that there's no like one type of student, but I will say that it's a very collegial program. You know, there are only 26 of you. You see each other a lot. You work together quite a lot. So people who like to work with other people who are genuinely curious about the world, people who are willing to try stuff, even if it's uncomfortable. And sometimes you feel like you're very awkward and things aren't working compared to your experience, especially as a senior undergrad. So I think those are really important, but we have introverts, we have extroverts, we have people who want to do nothing but financial reporting, and we have other people who don't have a clue. They just like talking to people. It's really, it's a wonderful mix of people. But as I say, the importance of wanting to tell other people's stories and not just your own is very high up there.
Okay. Let's see.
I'm not sure about the recording question. I'm hoping this will be shared.
It will be. It's recorded. It's being recorded, and it's going to be posted on the MJ website. And also, like once I get my hands on the recorded copy, we're going to have someone provide some captions so that it's accessible, and then I can send the link to students if that's something that that you desire. But we're gonna have the recording, and we're just going to take some time to do the captions.
Right.
Let's see.
I see a question from Keisha about the length of time for a television broadcast piece. As you can imagine, we have a lot of applications to go through and materials. So be selective, I would say. I don't know if there's a maximum time that we give. I mean, as long as it's not a TV documentary that you know watch on, or feature documentary you'd watch on Netflix or something, you're probably okay. But you know, make sure that you highlight the best stuff that you've got that you want to show off. Other questions?
Another question came in. As the statement of intent has 4 sections, components, which components would you say are the key to our statement?
Oh my gosh, what are the 4? I haven't, as I say, I'm embarrassed to say I haven't actually gone through as a student through the application process. So
the statement of interest asks students to state their reasons for pursuing graduate study in journalism, the research interests you may wish to pursue in your major project, how your previous studies and experience have prepared you for the MJ program, and your career objectives and how the MJ program relates to them.
right. So Melina, again, I'm going to be the weaselly person and say they're all pretty equally important. And as I've said before, it's especially with graduate students, it's like, do you know what journalism is? And are you prepared to spend the better part of the next 2 years doing it?
What I've seen in some feedback, like in the admissions process, I wouldn't say that it's the most important part, but I would say that even though your research interests may change a little bit, you know, once you get into the program, it's important to be succinct and with your, I guess, proposed MRP idea. You want to, because we're assessing your potential, because we expect that some students in this that we're letting into this program don't have journalism experience. It's a professional program, so we expect that people are like, this is a change of career situation for them. So we're assessing the potential, and we're looking at the feasibility of your project and how you crystallize it. And also for, you know, I was just thinking of this. I realized, like, I just remembered this. Sorry, but if you don't have a portfolio, your statement of interest is a sample of your writing. So you'd want to make sure that you are conveying the meaning that you want, and you want the admissions committee to see that you have a well thought out proposed project. Of course it can change, but I'm not saying that's the most important part, but I've noticed that some of the feedback I've seen is that if students aren't properly framing their project, it might go against them.
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice from Tanisha. The other thing, sorry, I had a tickle there. The other thing that I would say is that it's helpful for us to somehow be aware that you consume news media. And by that I mean that you consume news media, you have a sense of what you're going into as a career, but also the kinds of stories and how they get told. So it's never a bad thing to say, you know, I was really inspired by this long form piece that I read in The Walrus. And that's the kind of thing I'd really like to do with this kind of topic.
Okay. Are there any other questions? And if you've missed your question in the chat, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question aloud. Daniel and I are doing our best, but if we missed any, please ask your question aloud. And Nicholas has a raised hand. Please unmute your mic.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. How you doing?
Delightful. So what I did a 1-year postgraduate in media after my degree. I was wondering if that year will be considered equal to like my last year of studies and then bumping, so it's just like my last year of my undergrad, or if you're just looking at the undergrad.
We're just looking at the undergrad. However, we see all transcripts. So if any sort of additional education and certifications that you have would work in your favor. So we'll be considering it as part of the admissions committee process, but in terms of the basis of admission, we're looking at your undergrad.
Okay, so if I'm below the 3.0 in my bachelor's, then I'm not going to be considered at all.
I wouldn't say that. Joyce and I, speaking to our admissions officer, we're committed to using a holistic process. So we're willing to consider individuals who are just below our minimum requirements. You know, no guarantees, but we're looking for people with the best potential. Life happens to everybody. Imagine what it's going to be like for everyone with the COVID year on their transcript. You know, so we're using a holistic approach. So I wouldn't count yourself. I wouldn't count you out.
What I would say,
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, what I would say is it's a similar comment to the other person who was asking about, you know, I've worked as a journalist already. We do get people who have studied journalism in some way, shape, or form prior to coming to us. And so the big question is, okay, so you've already studied something to some extent. So why do you want to come for more to us? So I think apart from how it affects your grades, it's important to address in the letter of intent, the statements like, I already have done this, and this is why I want to come to you.
My other question is there someone that I can discuss this with a little bit to get a better picture of if this is the right option for me? Because it's kind of a big undertaking to do this whole application process if it's not worth it for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I think you can email either me or Tanisha. Tanisha's probably better in terms of the GPA and grade stuff to talk to. If you're interested in the program itself and how it might complement or duplicate or whatever what you've already done, I'm happy to address that probably via email.
Awesome. Thanks, Joyce.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Are there any more questions?
Yeah, actually, I had a question that is sort of piggybacking on Nicholas's first question, which is about sort of roughly like additional schooling and how that's perceived. For me, I completed an undergraduate degree and then quote unquote amended it with a second degree program that I didn't finish. I guess I'm curious to hear a bit from you guys about how you make sense of less like clear undergraduate degree. So I have an undergraduate degree and then I have a partial second undergraduate degree. And I guess I wanted to ask, like, what is my best shot at presenting that in a coherent way and making sense of that for you, and how you guys are sort of processing that sort of application?
So yeah, I would. It's what I'm going to say is very similar to what you just heard, which is, look, journalism is a field that people come in and out of by varying and very diverse paths. So we do have people who have we have people who have 3 degrees by the time they knock on our door. People who have practiced as social workers or lawyers or you name it. So there's nothing wrong in that. I think it's kind of like a job interview in which you put it on your CV or it appears, and then the question is just explaining how that fits into the rest of the trajectory that's brought you to apply. So acknowledging, like, I did this and it worked or it didn't work, or as Tanisha said, life happened or whatever it is. That's all. Just don't leave us with questions, I guess, wondering what happened.
And also I would add that it's full disclosure in terms of academic record. So I have some unfinished stuff on my records. If I were to be applying to a grad school program, they're going to see college that was one semester of a program, and it's just part of my academic record. But I think you'd be focusing on what's the basis of admission for the program. The basis of admission is a completed 4-year degree or equivalent when we're looking at the second half, the last 2 years. So if you have at least the basis of admission, the other stuff is just additional information. Some of it may not be that relevant if it's just an unfinished degree, but we do ask you to disclose it. I hope that helps. there's a raised hand from, pardon my pronunciation, Madis. Please unmute your mic and let me know your question.
Hi, yeah, it's Mattis. You got it right.
Oh.
Yeah, don't worry about it. So I had a question about the references. Sorry, I feel like I keep like beating like a dead horse with this, but for my I asked this question earlier, but I've been an editor at a university publication for 3 years. Would the business manager that I worked directly with be considered a professional reference or an academic reference?
Or professional.
And would just kind of like a follow up, would they like they can really speak to my abilities both as a writer editor and multimedia editor? Would that be an appropriate substitute for a second academic reference?
You know, it's we've had these, obviously we have a lot of people who come in with some kind of undergraduate media experience who include a reference from someone else at the masthead. So you just want to make sure you have a balance. Like you definitely want to have at least one academic. I should be quick looking at, I think Daniel's been answering a lot of questions here about these kinds of references. I certainly wouldn't go with any more than one of a sort of a peer at like, I think the situation you're describing right now. But they can be really well written and powerful testaments to your abilities.
Yeah, so I do have a journalism professor who's ready to give me a reference, and I was just wondering if the second one could just be could be my business manager at the university publication.
Sounds fine.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any more questions?
I'm looking in the chat at a question about creative writing. I love creative writing. I try and do some myself. I don't want to see it in an application, as wonderful as it would be, because that really does, it suggests to us, unfortunately, that you might not know what the program is all about. Now, to answer your question though, have graduates moved into a creative writing sphere after being involved in this program? Absolutely. And as you probably know, there are tons and tons of, including Canadian journalists of great repute who are also novelists, poets, screenwriters, etc. So there's, one only strengthens the other, as far as I can tell, whether you're interested in mystery writing or epic poetry. But no, please don't put it in your application. It just, you can certainly talk about it in your letter of intent and how you see those kinds of forms of expression feeding your study of journalism, but don't put it in the application. It's a good question to ask.
Okay. I don't think, have we missed any questions in the chat?
I think we've got most of them.
Okay. Is it fair to say there's no more questions? Thumbs up, no more questions? When will this be published on the MJ site? As soon as possible. Daniel, do we have an estimated time for like how long it will take for the recording to be ready?
We'll try to post it within this week or next week, definitely before the holiday break.
Thank you, Daniel. How much time will our referees get to submit their stuff? Well, that's a great question. They will have a lot of time to submit their letter. In fact, some students don't even get to complete their application because some referees take so long that the program gets full before the reference letter gets here. And that happened to a student one year where her application became complete July something or the other, and she applied in January. So it's important to communicate to your referees that they should be turning over a letter in a timely manner. The automated email will be sent out to the referees. If at any time you feel as though they're not really responding, you can send them a nudge yourself, because you'll see that whether your application is complete or not. And we don't get to see your application. The admissions officer doesn't review it until it's complete. So they have lots of time to do it, but we hope that they turn over a letter quickly.
As someone who writes a lot of these for people, yeah, we don't mind usually pleasant reminders that it's, you know, something that's in the hopper. If you can even give them a deadline and say, look, you know, first consideration is, you know, this date. Could you please help me by getting this in? So that's a little bit of advice to you.
Yes, and the first consideration date, I see it in the chat, is January 18th. So like once you apply by that deadline, we usually give a few weeks, maybe by mid-February, we start to look at the applications, because if you do your application on that day, it takes a couple of business days for the application to be generated, and then the portal for the portal to be created for you to upload, and then hopefully your referees turn over their letter quickly. But applying by that date ensures that you're considered in our first round, as long as your application is completed with the reference letters, because the other pieces are student driven. You have to submit those pieces.
There's a good question there, Tanisha, which I don't know the answer to, which is, are students able to see who are the deadbeats? You know, which professor still hasn't turned in their reference?
I think you can. I think in the portal. I don't know, Daniel. Do you know this is the answer? This is how you want to meet yourself?
Yes. So basically, what's going to happen is after you submit your application, guys, there's going to be an email goes to Ryerson. Ryerson that will send you guys an email saying your application has been submitted, and that has a link to the upload portal. Within that portal, you should have a to-do list or required document list, where you'll be able to sort of see what's missing. So for example, before you upload your resume or your statement of interest or your reference letters, you'll see all the items there. Once you've uploaded all the documents, you start seeing things disappear from your to-do list or your required documents. Same thing will happen with the letters of recommendation. So as soon as they submit it and Ryerson received them, they'll disappear from your to-do list. And then also it's important to note that once, because you're submitting your application in 2 steps, basically the first step is through the OUAC and the second step is through Ryerson. As soon as you complete your first step, Ryerson will receive the application, and that's when they'll email your referee. So what you can do if you want to make sure you give the referees enough time to write the letter and do all that kind of stuff, make sure you can start submitting your application now, do step 1. And then within the next few weeks and before the deadline, then you can complete step 2. But that also gives the referees enough time to receive the email from Ryerson, review what they have to write and answer, and then submit the application, the letter of recommendation that way. Okay. And also make sure to remind them to check their spam box in case it goes into their spam email.
Thanks, Daniel.
Good advice.
Is it okay if we have to change a referee? It's fairly difficult to do that. I know that admissions doesn't like to accommodate that request, because once you put in the system, they don't want to have to like take ad hoc requests through GRD admit, that email account. It's a lot of work, so you have to be firm with your referee selections and make sure that they're reliable. Is it possible to change the letter of intent after references have been contacted? If you've already submitted your letter of intent, I'm not even sure, like, if you submitted pieces of your application, at times, if students, let's say, submitted a portfolio and they misunderstood and submitted one thing, but they didn't put multiple things in one PDF, I've directed students to the admissions office, grdadmit@ryerson.ca, to ask if they can create and open up a checklist item to allow them to resubmit. I'm not sure if that can happen for letters of intent. I'm just not sure. Can you please clarify why you'd want to change your letter of intent after references have been contacted? What would your concern be, Anthony? Are you still there, Anthony?
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, so this is purely about timing. If I've got a reference that can only be contacted in the next few weeks, but I want a bit of longer time to work on my letter of intent, I'm wondering if I could go do those two things sort of concurrently. So have my reference contacted first, and then work on my letter of intent up until closer to the deadline.
Absolutely.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying. Around when will we receive news of whether or not we were accepted into the program? I'll start.
This seems like it might be a good question to close on, maybe.
Yes. So we do admissions on a rolling basis. So we begin to consider, admissions decisions, usually mid-February, mid to late February, and we produce decisions on a rolling basis until the program is full. Typically, the program is full in July, around there, June, July, depending on the year and the crop of applicants. It depends on the competition pool as well. Like with COVID, for instance, this cohort that just started, we found that, at least for media production, the other program that I work with, we had more people say yes to us than they have in the past, when we thought that perhaps it would be a deterrent. So those kinds of trends are hard to predict. So we stay open until the program is full, but we ultimately put out decisions on a rolling basis. There's no specific time that we know for sure you're going to get an answer so-and-so. We can't tell you that, but we make decisions until the program is full. I don't know if you want to add anything more, Joyce?
Yeah, I guess I'd just say the obvious, which is the earlier you can submit your application, the better. It's when the first batch that Tanisha's talking about, sort of to mid-February, those are the majority of the decisions that we start making. So if you can get into that first pool, get your stuff together, it's definitely to your benefit, I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, first off, Tanisha and Daniel, for setting this up and for moderating everything so well. Thank you also, everyone who took the time to come. As I say, some of the names look very familiar to me from my email inbox. So if we did not as a group answer your questions, I'll go through and get back to you. But if you have others, let us know too. So we're really excited. This is one of the very nice things to think about, starting a new program like this with new people. So please take care of yourselves. And again, thanks everyone for making for a really nice chunk of the evening.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye everyone.
Bye.